Good evening, everybody. We are live across the UK. Indeed, we are live across the world for this evening's Solomon Live. My name is Brodie. I'm a proud Worcestershire Freemason and also have the honour of hosting these monthly webinars of lively, engaging Freemasonry conversation. And if you do have any questions for our very special guest this evening, you can submit them via the question and answer facility at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. So what are we talking about this evening? Communicating Freemasonry in the 21st century. And who shall be joining us on the show tonight? Director of Membership and Communications at UGLE, Brother Sean Butler. Hello, Sean. How are you?
Hello, Brodie. Yep, all good. Thank you, mate. How are you?
Very, very good. Now, I've got to be honest about it. You and I know each other very well. I think the term is friends.
Yep.
But I am still going to ask you some of those honest questions. I mean, I've worked really hard on the quiz for you, so I've done that much, but you know, we can't pull any punches with this conversation this evening. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. No, this is all good. So, Sean, what we always like to do on a Solomon, and you know that only too well, we like to get to know our victim, sorry, our guest on the show. So, so let's talk about why you became a Freemason in the first place. Why did you join us?
Well, to be honest with you, I was always interested in Freemasonry. I would admit that my knowledge of it was limited, but I was always interested in the historical element of Freemasonry, and I knew, albeit as I admit, although my knowledge was limited, that what I did know was that there was a lot of history behind Freemasonry, and as a bit of a history nerd, that was always something that interested me. It always intrigued me. I always wanted to know and find out more. So really, it was just a case of doing a bit of research, which, as I'm sure we'll go on to talk about later, throws up some inaccurate representations of who we are and what we do as an organization. So it was wading through that really, and sort of getting to the truth of it. But it was definitely driven, as I say, by my sort of residual interest in it and wanting to find out more.
And have you got any members in the fraternity, members of your family in the fraternity?
Yes, my granddad is a Freemason. He was a Freemason down here in London. He was a Freemason in North London, and moved up north upon retiring. He's a Geordie, which explains why I'm a Newcastle United fan, for those of you who are ever wondering. Yes, so he was a Freemason. My cousin is also a Freemason. So there's certainly those sort of family connections, and really all that existed to do was encourage me even more. From my perspective, I sort of had a hunch that Freemasonry would be something that I enjoyed and was something I could really sort of get involved in. But seeing people, you know, that I trusted implicitly join and also enjoy it and come to me and say, you know what, you'd really enjoy this. That for me was signed, sealed, and delivered, to quote Stevie Wonder. That was it. That's all I needed to know. So as soon as I was old enough, I cracked on and got on with it.
So what was it like in those early days? I put that question to our assistant Grandmaster, Stephen Varley, last month. So what was it like during those early months? Because it can be quite strange in the beginning, or you can hit the ground running. I was one of those people that hit the ground running and loved it from day one. What was it like for you?
To be honest with you, the opposite probably to your experience, Brodie, and it's served me well in the job that I now do, because I think I probably had a relatively typical experience in that I remember when I joined, and I was basically told, turn up, you know, at this building in Covent Garden at this time, wear a black suit, and that was really it. You know, meet us here. And in those days, it was a place called Waltz, which for some of our viewers will be very familiar, which was sort of just across the road from the entrance to Freemasons Hall here in London. And I was told to wait there, and then I was ushered across the road, and up, and you know, was prepared in the necessary way. And I vividly remember laying in bed the night after my initiation. And I remember thinking to myself, what on earth was that? You know, genuinely, absolutely.
What's that all about?
Yeah, pretty well, quite. And you know, to be honest with you, seeing it subsequently, it then obviously all made sense. But it's given me that really interesting insight into. I think it's absolutely vital that in those early days of your experience of Freemasonry, having someone who's there to explain it to you, pretty much as soon as you walk out of that lodge room after you've been initiated, or at least put an arm around you and say, you know, FYI, don't worry about it if it's all a bit of a blur at the moment. That happens to everybody. You know, and then the other key thing was, which I was lucky enough to experience, was going along and seeing exactly what I'd been through happen to someone else. So seeing someone
So,
else go through that initiation meeting was key.
well, look at where you are now. Before we talk about your journey working for UGLE, let's continue your Masonic journey, if you will,
Mm.
and look at what you're doing on the. Let me see if I remember this date. It's not written down on a bit of paper here at all. 13th of February, 2025. Brother Sean Butler becomes Worshipful Master of Letchworth Lodge. So, are you looking forward to that? How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, you know what? I'm a bag of nerves about it, Brody, to be honest, because I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the most natural Freemason when it comes to the ceremony and the words, and uh, you know, that's something that I'm really sort of wary of and nervous about. But at the same time, excited. You know, I've heard a lot about it, and everyone I speak to says the same thing, which is that essentially Freemasonry is this amazing experience, and one of the key parts of that experience is going into the chair of your lodge. So that will be a special occasion. It will be a special night, and yeah, I hope as many people can be there as possible to share that with me.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try and join you for that because it's a very special occasion for me. It was one of the best days of my life, so that's what you've got to look forward to. So let's talk about a very important question before we get to your questions, ladies and gentlemen and brethren. I can see a lot of questions for me to put to Sean, so I'll do my very best to get to those in a bit. But let's talk about your journey at UGLE. How did that start? How did you start working in that glorious building?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's down to luck, as so often the thing with this sort of situation. I was sort of in a job at the time. I wasn't particularly enthused. I wasn't particularly enjoying it, and uh, again, I was sort of scrolling through Facebook actually one evening and saw a post from the United Grand Lodge of England advertising a position as a communications executive with particular responsibility for social media. And I thought, wow, yeah, that's right up my street. That's sort of a good match for my skill set. It's two things that I'm very interested in, be it Freemasonry and communications. And I applied. I had to send in my CV and a cover letter. And as you do with these things, you sort of forget about it and hope for the best. And yeah, a couple of days later, I got an email inviting me in for an interview. And coming in for that first interview was the first time that I'd actually been into Freemasons Hall
Wow,
outside of a meeting.
baptism by fire.
Quite, yeah. So this was in 2017. So we're talking about the throes of the tercentenary year, the 300th anniversary of founding of the Premier Grand Lodge, and the building was just full of energy. You know, you could really feel like there was that sort of excitement about the year and what was coming. And yeah, I was interviewed and that was that. I was offered the position and I started and I was actually very nearly late for my first day. I thought I would be smart and I got a really early train in. I think yeah, I'll make a really good impression. I'll get there early. And then I thought, oh, actually, you know, this time London's quite quiet. I think I'll get off. I used to go into Charing Cross, which is about a 10-minute walk to Freemasons Hall. And I thought, no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get off at Waterloo. I'm going to have a leisurely walk. I'll grab a coffee. And I completely lost track of time.
Oh
And
dear.
I think I got to Trafalgar Square, sort of did a long loop around and come through Westminster and down Whitehall. And I looked at my phone and I saw it was like 8:50 and I was due in at 9.
Oh dear.
And I ran. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally it does. I ran to Freemasons Hall, and the hilarious thing is that for many years, my pass to get me in, my security pass, had a picture of me ready-faced after my 10,000-meter run that I'd done, challenging Mo Farah for the Olympic record. I look horrible, so I have gone about it and changed my picture because I looked so awful.
Oh, well, thank
And
goodness
then
you got there.
yeah, and then I've been lucky enough, you know, worked hard, was promoted to a communications manager, went on to become the deputy director, and then yeah, became the director last year.
Well, let's talk about your new role
Mm.
because this is a very important job within all of Freemasonry, a massive job. We can't underestimate that. What's it been like so far in that job? Challenging, I should imagine is one of the words to describe it. But I would also imagine, Sean, for a Freemason to do that job, very enjoyable too.
Yes, definitely both of those things. Enjoyable because I get to work towards something that I'm very passionate about, which is obviously Freemasonry and working in communications. I get to help spread the word about all the fantastic work that our organization does and that members do around the country and around the world. So I'm very lucky in that aspect. And from the membership side of things, I'm at the front line of looking at ways that we can bring in more members and we can keep the ones that we currently have, and the two go very much hand in hand, membership and communications, but absolutely challenging. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, Brody. And it was probably in the first couple of days of the job that it hit me, just quite how huge the role was. But it's exciting as well for that reason. Actually, I'm a person who thrives under pressure, and I know that the reason that we're doing it is the right reason, and we have an excellent strategy now in place that we need to deliver for the betterment of the organisation, which we need to crack on with. So challenging, yes, but exciting and fulfilling 100%.
Brilliant. Well, it's good to hear that. And Sean, I think most of us are aware how difficult the job is, how wonderful it is in equal measure, and what a great job you're doing as well. I can say that since
Thank you.
the work I do as provincial communications officer for the next few weeks anyway in Worcestershire. Yeah. Not only that, as if you weren't busy enough, you're also one of the hosts of CraftCast, the UGLE podcast, along with James and Stephen, who I also know very well. How's that all doing? Because that's a big part of communications.
It is. It is. It's something that was bubbling away in the background for a number of years, to be honest with you. Generally, we're always open and keen to explore as many avenues of communications as we possibly can. And podcasts for the last 10 years have really developed into a massive part of how organizations and how individuals communicate with one another. I'm a massive fan of a number of podcasts. And really, for us, it seemed to be a bit of a no-brainer. And at that point, it was just a case of putting together the right team of people. We're very lucky in that my communications manager, Marta Zandri, who you also know very well, Brody, is our producer. She keeps us in check. She makes sure we behave.
Yes.
And as you say, James Dalton and Stephen Watley, two very dear friends of mine, who I knew reasonably well beforehand, but just the experience of working closely with them, they're extremely. I mean, I feel very inferior as a Freemason when I'm around those two because Stephen is.
The knowledge is amazing, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, Stephen's 24, I think. Don't want to age you, Stephen, if you're listening. And is already an officer an active officer in his district. He's the master of his lodge. He's in a number of orders. James has a very, very sort of important role within Warwickshire, and yeah, it's very good fun. And actually, what we found is that people really enjoy it, and we are keen to look at any avenues possible for us to speak openly about Freemasonry, and moving towards the end of the second season, we've got 2 more episodes to go. So we've got an episode on the Royal Arch coming up in the next couple of weeks, and then a very, very, very important guest host joining us for the season finale. So we're excited to share that with you all.
Well, you are doing such a great job with CraftCast. I love the chemistry all 3 of you have. The topics are great, and one of the other things I enjoyed was last month you had the Grand Secretary Adrian Marsh with you, who revealed that Freemasonry was great to get him in with his girlfriend's family at the time. So there you go. Good
there you go.
Relationships. If you missed it, track it down on a platform near you anytime soon. It really, really good. Now, Sean, I think we should get to some questions. We've got a bucket load coming in. So first question from Mark Gately. And he says, is there one platform? Now, we're going to be going to and from discussing various things, and we'll talk about social media in more detail a little bit later on. But Mark wants to know, is there one platform that you suggest to use to promote our lodge? He's talking about his own lodge there. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, generally the advice that we give here at UGLE is that Facebook is very much the, excuse the colloquialism, OG of social media platforms when it comes to Freemasonry. And the reason for that, and I hear a lot of commentary and narrative around Facebook that it's, if you want to attract young people, Facebook isn't the place. Well, actually, communications generally we should take a holistic approach. But Facebook really, for me, is a good place to start. I find it, and I've the many people that I'm lucky enough to speak to on a daily basis say the same. It's the most intuitive of the platforms. It has the most flexibility in terms of the creation of a page, the opportunity to really sell your lodge and talk about what makes your lodge different to other lodges around the country. And that would very much be the place that I start. And also, there are other platforms. You've obviously got X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram, but really as that starting point to feel your way into Masonic social media, I would say Facebook is the best place to start.
That is a very, very good question. Thank you very much indeed. And one more for now, Sean, before we get back to some of the stuff that I want to talk to you about. And Martin White's been in touch. Evening, Martin. Thank you for submitting your question. He says, how do provincial comms teams better support lodges with their comms? So we kind of touched on that a little bit. For my lodge, I've developed a website, brochure, and social site with no guidance in particular from the provincial team. I'm due to become provincial comms officer later this year, so keen to hear more. So briefly for Martin, what would you like to say, Sean?
Yeah, it's commendable, I think, the ambition there. I mean, realistically, it's a two-way thing, I think, and that lodges have a responsibility if they want to be on social media. There's by no means an insistence that that's the case. But if that's what a lodge would like to do, then I think taking advice from a province, I think generally, provincial communications teams, I think now more than ever, and I include yourself in this, Brodie. I know you're only doing it for another few weeks, but we now have more than ever some extremely well qualified communications teams across the provinces. We are very lucky with the people that we have, and to a man, each of those PCOs and an ever-growing number of district communications officers as well are there and ready and prepared to assist lodges with whatever they need, and have it willing to have that conversation, willing to pick up the phone, meet over a coffee, is absolutely key. And I think if putting myself in your shoes, if I was in a lodge, if I was looking at how I can support the province, I would be thinking about that consistency of the message, which again, I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit later, but we all have to be singing from the same hymn sheet. I think a traditional historical issue that we've had when we've communicated about Freemasonry has been that we all love what Freemasonry is, and we all get very excited when we talk about it, but it actually means different things to different people.
Absolutely.
And that's fine, that's excellent, but that can often complicate and confuse the messaging within our communications because we all have our own perception of what that is. So I would really encourage you to talk to your comms team, find out from their point of view what we are saying, how we are communicating about the organization, and it's our job at UGLE to do the research and to talk to people who aren't Freemasons and find out what they find as a pull. What do they find attractive about our organization? And then we can play on those things to help attract more people in. So that would be my advice.
Sean, superb answer. Martin, that is a great question. And let me talk on behalf of any PCO that could be watching or maybe not watching this evening. As the communications officer for Worcestershire, I would love to get every single lodge in Worcestershire in touch with me on a regular basis, or previously to ask how I can better assist them. So great advice, Sean. We'll get back to some more questions in a moment. Now, I said at the start of Solomon Live that I had some pretty heavy questions to ask you, or honest questions as well. So let's have this honest conversation now with some of the issues in Freemasonry when it comes to the media's portrayal of us. First of all, recent comments in the press coverage that UGLE tackled head on. Tell me about those and why you reacted and UGLE's reacted in such a way.
To speak absolutely plainly, Brodie, it's because we're fed up of, as I'm sure all of our members are, of misconceptions, misinterpretations, and to be honest with you, in a couple of the cases recently, sheer lack of research, which leads to some of the tripe that we see written about our organization. I mean, speaking bluntly, that's the reality. And gone are the days where, as an organization, UGLE are going to stand idly by and allow certain media outlets to write rubbish about us. That's just not gonna hold sway anymore. We are determined and certain that wherever we see it, and over the last couple of weeks we've seen it, unfortunately, more regularly than we'd like to. We're not going to allow that to stand. And there have been 3 instances in the last probably 3 weeks actually, where we have had to proactively take a stand. And as I say, I don't mind people having an opinion about an organization. We can't be, we're never going to appeal to everyone, and that's fine. Neither should we. Freemasonry is not going to be appealing to everybody. But what I do take umbrage with, and what I will challenge, and UGLE is firm about this, is the willful misrepresentation of what we are as an organization. And ignorance is not an excuse, because we have something called Google. And there is no excuse for someone not properly researching what they're saying. We had 2 examples in recent times of someone claiming that Freemasonry is a male-only hobby. That's fundamentally untrue. And it's that sort of thing which could easily be remedied by a basic piece of research, which in my opinion,
10, 15 seconds to find that out.
Yeah, any journalist worth their salt, in my opinion, should be doing that. So from my point of view, and this is going forward now, this is the way that we're going to deal with it. We will be countenancing and rebutting anything that we see in the press that is fundamentally wrong. And what will happen as a result of that is that over time, the narrative will begin to change. People will start to realize that we are not an easy target, that people can't just sling mud at us and hope that they get away with it. Those days have gone, and we're not tolerating it anymore. It's really as simple as that.
Well, the wonderful thing there, Sean, is we've always said, haven't we, in communications in particular, the best way to tackle any negative perceptions of Freemasonry is to talk about the great stuff that we do. And there's plenty of that. But equally, we can't let people get away with saying things that aren't true anymore. So I'm delighted to hear about that. So when it comes to the 2 women Grand Lodges, and we've interviewed them both on Solomon Live over the last few years, have you got a strong relationship with them, both internally and as a comms point of view?
Very much so. Very much so. And, actually, as an organization, be it UGLE, we work extremely closely with both the Order of Women Freemasons and the Honourable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons, which are the 2 female Grand Lodges in this country. And really, that was on display in the last few weeks. With we've done 2 or 3 joint statements with them to make it absolutely clear that we are united against these misrepresentations of Freemasonry as we see them, and we have regular conversations. I'm just today I bumped into Carol Cole, who's the new Grand Master of the Honourable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons. Funnily enough, one of my co-hosts on CraftCast, Stephen, his mum is the new Grand Chancellor for that Grand Lodge. So there's a lot of these sort of interlinks. But really, I think it's driven by the fact that we all love Freemasonry, and we get annoyed and irritated when it's misrepresented and miscommunicated about. And there's a mutual acceptance, I think, that working closely together, the 3 of us, is only for the benefit. It's only ever going to work. So we're really keen, and we're lucky that we do get on so well.
Well, that is music to everybody's ears listening to this and watching this. But we've got to kind of talk about it briefly, just to finish this particular topic off. But why do you think this still happens in the first place? So we've discussed why we're going to tackle it head on. But why do you think small aspects of the media are still reflecting Freemasonry in such a way? Why do you think that happens, in your opinion?
I think it's laziness generally. I really do. And these misconceptions that we hear repeated so regularly. In fact, if I was to go on Twitter or X right now and type in the word Freemasons, it would be blindingly obvious to anyone who did that. A lot of these misconceptions have so many historic roots behind them, and there are links back to crikey, the Inquisition and the turn of the century and a number of reasons. Unfortunately, even some of the things that were some of the propaganda that was put forward by the Nazis in the 1930s, some of the stuff that was put forward by them, we still see it propagated today against us as an organization. And there's a lot of noise with that, on social media. Um, Unfortunately, the reality is that over a period of time, for whatever reason, the organization took the decision to not be as proactive as perhaps we are now with the media. And unfortunately, with the development of new technologies and the way that the press has worked, moving to a 24-hour news cycle, there is a thirst now for a constant stream of news and information. And I think that leads to the press and journalists often becoming desperate. And then you feed in the social media element to that, where people are basically just chasing likes and retweets now, to get that endorphin rush. And to, that's the modern way of having a good result, getting a viral tweet. And I think we're just an easy target, and we're still in some areas seen as that. And we are, as I said, we are committed to address that where we see it. And how do we do that? Well, as I say, we address it head on. We go out and we respond in kind. We don't allow them to get away with it. We face it. We challenge it, and we clarify, and we share fact. And really, the hope is that over time we will drown out the voices of those that are always going to be negative about us as an organization by doing what you said, Brody, which is focusing on the good that we do as an organization and the amazing things that our members do. In the statement to the piece in the New European recently, there was reference to our work in charity, and it was a ludicrous statement, but it gave us a perfect opportunity to go back in kind and say, you clearly haven't heard about the £50 million that was donated by Freemasons during the pandemic. You clearly haven't heard about the tens of millions of pounds that have been donated over the years.
Or perhaps you can speak to a Freemason. That's a novel idea, isn't it? Now, Sean, we've got to move on because we've got just over 15 minutes left. I mean, crikey, okay. That has gone so quickly. So let's talk about something really positive now, and that is Project Y. Love this name. What is Project Y, and why is this so important to Freemasonry moving on?
So something I touched on earlier was that consistency and the importance of consistency as we start to develop how we communicate externally when we're talking to non-Freemasons about Freemasonry. And Project Y was a task that was given to us by the program master as part of the strategy working party, which I know the assistant Grand Master talked about on the last Solomon Live. And he gave that project to what's called the Members Pathway Working Party, and which is chaired by Ian Copestake, who's the Provincial Grand Master for Derbyshire. And Ian got a little group together consisting of myself, a chap called Chris Hurst, who's the project manager for the Members Pathway, Mark Costello, who's previously an assistant provincial Grand Master in East Kent. And the idea being that it was our job to basically go away and work out, with the help of others, including John Roscoe and a chap called Peter Rees, who's a marketing expert, to go away and really think about how we talk about Freemasonry to those who aren't Freemasons. And often as Freemasons, and I'm sure I'm already guilty of this on this webinar, we use language that perhaps to other people is a bit alien, it's a bit different. And that can immediately put people off. So for us, it was about going away and thinking about all of those things and looking at how we can try and develop that consistency nationally and internationally when we speak about Freemasonry. Why are we doing it? Well, because, as I say, the more that we communicate, and we intend to communicate more, we need to communicate more as an organization. As we do that, it's really important that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And that if someone is speaking to the press in Cornwall, they're saying the same or a similar thing to what the people in Northumberland are saying, for example. And that's really important. So that's been a project that's going on, and we're making some really good progress.
I'm loving the name of it, Project Y. Sounds absolutely fantastic. So how are you rolling this out then, Sean? When is it going to start filtering to the districts, the provinces, Met? When will we start hearing more about that?
Yeah, so we're hoping to sort of have some more in the next few months. What we're absolutely certain to doing, because look, this isn't the first time that this project has been attempted. There's been many iterations of this in the past, but what we're convinced and determined is that when we do it and when we go live with it, so to speak, that it's right and it does what it needs to do. And what's different about this than previous iterations is that we're not just focusing on attracting new members, we're also looking at the sort of three whys. Project Why consists of three whys essentially. Why become a Freemason? So we've touched on that. Why remain a Freemason? So that's really targeted at those who are members currently, and why they should stay. And also, why come back to Freemasonry? If you've left Freemasonry for whatever reason, why should you rejoin? Why should you take a second thought and maybe reconsider joining us? So we're really expanding it beyond that simple attraction process and looking more at that retention and sort of reaching out, as I say, to those that have maybe lost their way a little bit. So it's wide ranging, it's a big project, and we want to make sure that when we do launch it, it's absolutely spot on and it does exactly what it does on the tin for people that are using it.
Sean, thank you. Brilliantly explained. And we'll talk more about member engagement a little bit later on. And actually, do you remember the digital marketing campaign from a year or two ago? We'll talk more about that and some lessons learned in that. But back to the questions. And Gary Warmold. Gary, thank you for your question to Sean. It says, how difficult has it been convincing the older generation to use and accept social media as a force of promoting Freemasonry? Because we've got our older brethren, and thank heavens we have them. We learn so much from them. But back in the day, social media wasn't around. How easy has it been to convince the more senior brethren that social media is the way to go?
To be honest with you, and I can genuinely say this, I don't think in my 7 years at UGLE I've ever had any brother, be it younger or older, whoever, say to me that they don't believe in the benefits of social media, or they don't believe that social media can be used in a positive way for us as an organization. So the direct answer to the question is pretty easy, actually. Because actually what I feel and I hear when I speak to all of our brethren, not just older Freemasons, but young ones as well, is a passion for making sure that we grow and develop as an organization, and that we spread the word and spread the message about Freemasonry as widely as possible. And actually, the fact that it's a new form of technology, there are forms of technology that didn't exist, particularly thinking of something like AI, that didn't exist when I joined UGLE. So we're sort of all on a journey now. Communications as a thing, as an industry, as an area, is constantly developing. It's constantly changing. So we're all sort of playing catch up in some ways. Who'd heard of TikTok 5 years ago?
TikTok, what's that? Only joking. Carry on.
That's the noise a clock makes, isn't it, Brody? Yeah. But in all seriousness, these sorts of new technologies, we're all learning. We're all having to take it in our stride and pick out where we go. And really, it's our job and the job of communications officers around the provinces and people who are really keen in lodges to, if people are unsure, or if they need reassuring about things and whatnot, it's our job to have those conversations and be upfront and honest with them. And there are pitfalls to using social media. We need to be honest and open about that. But actually, what we can do is we can provide the tools and the assistance and the guidance to make sure that if you are interested in using social media, that you do so in a way that's correct. And we have a social media policy from the Board of General Purposes here at UGLE. And if you haven't read that, I would encourage you to do so, because it's the rules by which Masonic social media is governed. But yeah, in answer to your question, it's been pretty easy. And anyone I've spoken to has only really been really supportive of what we're trying to do, and the fact that we're trying to really vocalize Freemasonry to an external audience.
Sean, thank you. Gary, as always, thank you for your question. So I'm going to put a question to you in a few minutes, Sean, courtesy of Lawrence Baggerly. Hopefully I pronounced your name, Lawrence. But before we get to that, we'll talk about upscaling paid social media. What were the lessons you learned from the digital marketing campaign a few years ago that's enabled this to move forward?
Yeah, well, for those of you that aren't aware, we UGLE back in a few years ago now, time flies, launched its first ever digital marketing campaign. And what we mean by that is essentially paid advertisements about Freemasonry on Facebook. And then in the second campaign, Instagram as well, the two linking very closely because they're both owned by Meta. Well, what we learned, Brody, really was that it worked. I mean, that it was worth us doing. It was something that hadn't really been considered before. we weren't really sure of whether it was worth the resource and the time. But actually, what it really demonstrated was that, number one, there is definitely a thirst for knowledge and interest about Freemasonry externally. We got an excellent number of people coming through the campaign, but actually what we also saw was, I mean, those adverts over the course of 3 months had over 1 million people engaging. So that's not just clicking on the link, that's scrolling through the website, that's reading the content on the advert, and that sort of advertisement, that's the cost of a prime time Saturday night advertising slot on BBC One, during the Euros final or something. So we were really happy with those results. But I think additionally on top of that, what I've been really happy with is how we can do that on a slightly smaller scale. So we obviously did it nationally, but what I see now across the provinces and the districts is a number of examples where provinces are really picking up the mantle and doing brilliant work on paid social media. The example that immediately comes to mind is Derbyshire. Derbyshire is a province that I spoke to a lot. They were very keen to know more. They wanted to learn. They wanted to investigate this as a possibility for themselves, and they've had tremendous success. And to the extent that in one particular area of the province, they've actually had to turn off the advert early because they were getting so much interest. So, yeah, seeing it work on that smaller scale has been great.
Oh, that's exciting, isn't it? And wonderful to hear a success story. But when it comes to social media, what are we doing to address the scammers? Because I've noticed your account on Twitter and maybe even on Facebook has been cloned a few times. What are we doing to address that issue? Because it's so frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, being 6'5", Brodie, those people haven't gone through the growing pains that I've had to claim to be me.
Nobody has.
They haven't been called Green Giant throughout school. I haven't had to tolerate that. Unfortunately, we spoke briefly. There are pitfalls to social media. We have a really clear set of guidelines when it comes to scammers, which unfortunately is one of the downsides of sort of Masonic social media. See it and we block it. We have zero tolerance approach.
Yes.
And a lot of the social media platforms are becoming more canny, more aware of how these scams work. Contrary to popular belief, they are actually quite smart in how they do it. They know, for example, if they're targeting someone in the UK, well, it's 3 a.m. in the UK, which means that I have at least 6 hours until anyone's going to see this. So within that 6 hours, I might catch a few people with my scam, that sort of thing. So where we see it, just block it and don't give them the air or the space.
Brilliant. Thank you. And back to Lawrence's question. Lawrence, thank you very much indeed. This ties in with what we're talking about. When you're creating social media content, specifically with a view to attracting new members, how do you identify or decide which demographic to target first? Lawrence, that's a great question. Timely what we're talking about. Sean, over to you.
Yeah, very good question, Lawrence. I mean, to be honest with you, with us, the one demographic that we keep as wide as possible, particularly at that starting point of our campaign, is age. So we basically target people from the age of 18, which is the age that people can become a Freemason, all the way up to about 100 years old. Because I think that actually perhaps in the last few years, we've maybe focused too much on that younger side of things. And actually, there's another group of people at the other end of the spectrum that perhaps have just retired, have time on their hands, who would also really enjoy the sociability and what Freemasonry has to offer. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on both ends of that spectrum. Area would be the absolutely key one. Location. That's fundamental to your campaign. What you don't want to do is spread your resource too thinly. So if you have, say, a £50 spend that you're looking to use in a social media campaign, if I use that £50 spend to cover the whole of London, chances are I'm not going to reach many people. But targeting smaller areas that you know well, that you can then look at digging a bit deeper on demographics, hobbies, interests, that sort of thing, works a lot better because your resource and the money that you have towards the campaign is being used more effectively rather than being spread too thinly across a wider geographical area.
Brilliant. Lawrence, as I've just alluded to, a very timely question. Sean, just time for a few more questions. And one of the things you've spoken about is member engagement, engaging with our membership, retention. It all comes into the same category. I I think it's a no-brainer, but why is it so important, particularly right now?
Yeah, well, it's important because, members need to be proud to be a Freemason. And as I say, from my experience from the first 2 years of my membership, my Masonic world was my lodge, my mother lodge. That for me was my world, really. And outside of that, we did a few toasts at dinner, but really, beyond that, there was nothing. And for me, I think that really undervalues the general Masonic experience. And there's real power and pride, I think, in knowing that as Freemasons, we're not just part of that little lodge or that little unit. We are part of something much bigger. We're part of a province or a district, which holds festivals and donates thousands and thousands of pounds to good causes. We're part of a Grand Lodge nationally, and not just any Grand Lodge, the Mother Grand Lodge of Freemasonry.
Oh, yeah.
What comes out of UGLE reverberates around the Masonic world, and to be part of that, headed up by the Grand Master, the Duke of Kent, is a very, very special thing. And that feeling of belonging, I think, is massively important. And the more that we can do to reinforce that with our members and make them feel part of that, I think the better off we'll be.
And what kind of things, I mean, just a few examples of what we can expect in the future with how we're communicating with our existing membership.
Yeah, I mean, look, we already have FMT, which we're looking at ways that we can improve that. We always welcome feedback on that as a resource. First Rising, again, we really want to include some key messages from UGLE. That's our way directly into your inbox as a member. That's how we talk to you with all the key pointers that are coming out of UGLE. What's to come? We're really looking at ways that we can maximize that, and not just from a point somewhere down the line in your Masonic experience. We want that to start, that member engagement to start from the earliest possible point of you walking out of that room after you've become initiated, really. Because from that moment, you should know that you are part of something greater than just that lodge, that you've had that experience, and the amazing lodge that I'm sure that would be. So we're really keen to investigate and look at ways that we can sort of make that a reality, to be honest with you.
Brilliant. So that's to look forward to. I'll tell you what we'll do. Last question of the show, and forgive me, ladies and gentlemen and brethren, I can only ever scratch the surface of the questions that we get in, and so many fantastic questions that I'll make sure that I pass on to Sean after tonight's Solomon Live. But this is a really good one because it's something that you're doing at the moment. A lot of provinces are considering doing it, and a lot of provinces are all doing it. What am I talking about? A podcast. Now, John Trott wants to know, is there any guidance or support out there for setting up a provincial podcast which could be used as a way of attracting more local candidates? Because podcasts, as you know only too well, Sean, inward facing, outward facing as well. That's a question from John.
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, my main piece of advice would be get in touch with us here. We can put you in touch with, there are a number of really good provincial podcasts now. You have the one up in Durham, which is hosted by the provincial Grand Master John Thompson and Gavin up in Durham there, which is really interesting. You have the new podcast that's just come out in Derbyshire. Really enjoy that. That's a good listen. So I'm more than happy to put basically anyone in touch with those people to hear from them, and they can provide any advice and guidance from a provincial point of view to get this. And you don't have to spend loads of money. There's a myth with podcasting that it costs an arm and a leg. It really doesn't, not in 2024. So they can advise from content to actually equipment and that sort of thing that you need to make a good and interesting and engaging podcast.
What a great answer once again. John, I think you've got some good stuff there. Get in touch with Sean and the team. They'll put you right as rain. Quarterly communication tomorrow. I'll be missing it. First one I've missed in a very long time. Good reason for that though. It's my mother lodge's 180th anniversary. So I thought
Wow.
I'd in that. So happy birthday, Royal Standard Lodge. So how do you get involved communications wise with quarterly communication? Is that something that you do work on?
Yeah, I mean, the whole of UGLE, to be honest with you, has a part. I mean, the main heavy lifting really is in our secretariat team. They do all the organising. and the sort of the main thrust of the work. Really, from a comms point of view, what we want is that actually people who, like yourself, Brodie, who perhaps can't attend, still feel part of it. And the easiest way really for us to do that is through social media. So Shay Aziz, my social media exec, will be beavering around tomorrow, trying to pick up a feel and the atmosphere of what it feels like to be at a Grand Lodge meeting. We put together a video a little while ago for social media, which was a sort of back behind the scenes view of what goes into making a quarterly communication so special. And we really want people to feel part of it, and also to really make people aware that it is a special event, and if they're able to come, that they should do.
Well, brethren, have a wonderful time. If you're going to the big building tomorrow, gutted not to be there. I've explained my reason why. Sean, last question, and you have been absolutely outstanding. Thank you ever so much for helping us understand communicating Freemasonry in the 21st century. So what is the future of Freemasonry when it comes to a comms point of view, looking forward to the next 5 years, for example?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Brodie, it's a continuation of our ambition to be open, to share all of the amazing qualities that Freemasonry has, the position that it has within society, the vital role that we play within our communities. We need to do more, and we will continue to do more to share that. We will continue to, as I said earlier, address misconceptions where we see them. We will continue to challenge things that we don't think are right. As I say, gone are the days where we sit by idly and watch as people disparage us and talk about us in a negative way. We won't tolerate that anymore. And I hope that in 5 years we get to a position where people are proud, which I know a number of our members already are, proud to talk openly about their membership of Freemasonry without fear of discrimination, of negativity, and with real pride. And I think if we can say that, then we would have done a good job.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of everybody who's watching and everybody who will watch, Sean, on behalf of UGLE Freemasons and everybody else as well, thank you for the hard work that you and your team do. Brother Sean Butler, Director of Membership and Communications, have you enjoyed your Solomon Live experience?
It's been excellent, and I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you, Brodie, and the team behind the scenes that make these happen. You do a fantastic job. And just like with the podcast and all the other comms channels that we have, Solomon Live is a really important way for us to engage with members and non-members alike. So thank you, Brodie, and for the time that you take to bring these together, and to Tim and the rest of the team behind the scenes for making it such a success.
Oh, bless you. That means the world to us. Thank you so much, Sean. So, ladies and gentlemen and brethren, a date for your diary. Our next Solomon Live will be Tuesday, the 9th of July, where our topic will be engaging new Freemasons, where we'll be discussing what makes new and young Masons clubs so special and why they're so important in the future of Freemasonry. And joining us will be Right Worshipful Brother Neil Conley, Provincial Grand Master of Hertfordshire. Can't wait to chat to him, and a bunch of new Masons as well. So that's Tuesday, the 9th of July, 2024, of course, live at 7:30 UK time. And if you haven't done so already, please, do it now. Please register for Solomon. solomon.ugle.org.uk is where you will find that wonderful facility full of useful and fantastic content for your daily advancement in Masonic knowledge. Until next month, enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care, and good night, everybody.